Welcome, curious minds. Today we're doing a deep dive, really getting into that fascinating intersection between religious studies and, well, secular phenomena.
Sounds great.
We're unpacking a really influential idea today from a pivotal figure, Ninian Smart.
Ah, yes. Smart's contributions, they really fundamentally shaped how we approach the study of religion.
Especially with that innovative dimensions model he developed, right?
Yeah,
It gives such a unique lens.
exactly. Unique lens for analysis.
So our mission, our focus today is exploring Smart's compelling argument. It was controversial at times,
Definitely controversial.
that nationalism shares, well, a lot of core characteristics with religion. So much so, he argued, we can analyze it using the same framework.
Yeah, it's a provocative idea.
And we'll also dig into the significant critiques, the pushback against this idea, and its broader implications, including how it pops up even now in debates about religious education.
It's still very relevant.
Okay, so let's start with the man himself. Who is Ninian Smart? Why is his work so central to religious studies?
Well, Ninian Smart, born in Cambridge, England, he was a real pioneer. I mean, he set up the first Department of Religious Studies in the UK over at Lancaster University back in '67.
The first one. Wow.
Yeah. And later, he held a big post in the U.S., too, at UC Santa Barbara as the J.F. Rowney Professor in the Comparative Study of Religions. His influence, honestly, it's hard to overstate in the academic world.
And he took this, well, really bold step, didn't he? Moving religious studies away from traditional theology, pushing for a more secular approach. How did he see that working? Why was that such a big deal back then?
That's really the groundbreaking part. Smart argued quite strongly for religious studies to be a secular discipline, meaning it would investigate the truth and worth of religion generally, per se, but, and this is crucial, without trying to judge the truth claims of any specific faith.
Okay, so objective study, not faith-based evaluation.
Precisely. He talked about his own journey, actually, learning Chinese through Confucian texts, encountering Buddhism in Sri Lanka. He said it woke him from a kind of Western slumber.
A Western slumber. Interesting phrase.
Yeah. And it made him realize that theism, belief in a god or gods, it wasn't actually essential for something to be a religion.
Right, because you have major traditions, like some forms of Buddhism, that aren't centered on a deity.
Exactly. But they're profoundly religious in experience and practice.
And that famous quote of his, "She who knows but one religion knows none." What did that mean for his actual method, his approach?
It meant he adopted what he called a worldview analysis. He argued the subject matter, what religious studies looks at, was basically non-finite.
Non-finite, meaning it goes beyond just churches and temples.
Way beyond. It could include secular ideologies too, things like Marxism, and crucially for our chat today, nationalism.
Okay, because he saw them as functionally similar.
Functionally similar, yes. Providing these comprehensive ways for people to understand the world, their place in it. For Smart, looking at it this way was vital. It was a way to combat tribalism, as he put it, and encourage broader understanding between different belief systems.
Okay, so to help us navigate all these complex worldviews, he gave us this toolkit, his famous 7 dimensions of religion. Why develop these? And maybe walk us through a couple that really show his perspective.
Absolutely. It's a great question. See, Smart's dimensions were a clever way to sidestep that endless, frankly, quite tedious debate over defining religion.
Right, which can go around in circles.
Exactly. So instead, he identified these types of experience and expression that you demonstrably find in religious or spiritual contexts. This let him do broader comparative study across lots of different traditions, even ones that didn't really fit a neat Western box.
Makes sense. So which dimensions were key?
Well, for instance, the experiential emotional dimension. For Smart, this was paramount.
The feeling part.
The feeling part, yeah. The personal encounters, the aha moments, that sense of awe, bliss, revelation. He actually called it the food on which the other dimensions of religion feed.
The food, I like that. Because it's the starting point, the spark.
Often, yeah. It's the powerful personal spark. Think of, Muhammad's encounter with Gabriel, or the Buddha's big insight under the Bodhi tree, that raw experience.
That connection is incredibly clear. The personal inner thing igniting something bigger. So from that spark, how do things become, say, shared stories or practices? I'm thinking like the ritual, practical, or mythological narrative dimensions.
Precisely. That powerful experiential base often flows right into the ritual practical dimension. This is the performed religion, the things people do consistently.
Like baptism or daily prayer.
Exactly. Christian baptism, daily prayer in Islam, Hindu yajna, those ancient Vedic fire rituals, these practices often reenact or reinforce those core experiences.
Okay, and the stories.
That's the mythological narrative dimension, the storytelling aspect. Whether people believe them literally or, more symbolically, it doesn't really matter for the analysis. These stories explain the world, our place in it. They carry important ideas across generations, orally, written down, even in art.
Fascinating how they weave together. Okay, so you have the experiences, the rituals, the stories. How do they get formalized, structured? How do they start shaping how we actually live day to day? This sounds like the doctrinal, philosophical, and ethical legal dimensions.
You got it. The doctrinal philosophical dimension is where ideas get formalized. You see logical systems of meaning emerge, like, say, the Catholic catechisms or the complex Hindu philosophical schools. It's how a worldview makes intellectual sense of everything.
The intellectual framework.
Right, and the ethical legal dimension.
Yeah.
That provides the guidance on how to live. It often aims for happiness or sets up systems of right and wrong, good and evil. It's the moral compass, essentially.
Okay, and the last couple?
Then you have the institutional social dimension. That's the organized groups, the communities of adherents. Could be a huge hierarchy like the Church of England or a looser structure like the Quakers. This is also where you see internal tensions, different groups within the larger whole.
And finally,
The material artistic dimension, all the physical stuff that gets created, sculptures, paintings, amazing buildings, secret cities. These things provide historical evidence, but they also enrich religious life right now.
and the key is they all interact, right? Not just separate boxes.
Absolutely not separate boxes. They're dynamic. A profound experience, that experiential dimension, might lead to new rituals, inspire new stories, and eventually get formalized into doctrine and maybe even a whole new social structure or institution.
Okay, so with this incredibly versatile framework now laid out, Smart did something pretty bold. He applied it to nationalism, something most people wouldn't instinctively call a religion. How did he possibly make that case, that nationalism functions like a religion?
Well, Smart was coming from a functionalist perspective. That means he was less interested in some essential definition of religion and more interested in what something does in society, how it functions for people.
Okay, function over essence.
Right. And from that viewpoint, he argued that nationalism is, in essence, a worldview, just like a religion is. He pointed out that they both share some really powerful properties, and you could analyze nationalism pretty effectively using those same 7 dimensions.
Okay, so what were some of those powerful shared properties he pointed to between religion and nationalism?
Well, think about it. Both demand immense sacrifices from people, right? They command incredibly strong passions, deep loyalties.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they both involve this kind of mystical participation of the individual in a greater whole, like a nationalist feeling personally humiliated if their nation loses a war, or that collective joy in victory. It's a deep identification.
I see that. What else?
Both offer a kind of future hope. Anthony Smith, another big scholar in nationalism studies, he actually called nationalism a salvation ideology.
Salvation within the nation.
Within the nation, yeah.
Yeah.
And both define sacred territory, the homeland, and sacred time, like national holidays or foundational historical moments. They give people meaning and orientation.
Okay, so those are the shared properties. How did his 7 dimensions specifically map onto nationalism? Can you give some examples?
Sure. Nationalism, just like religion, is often incredibly strong in dimensions like, say, myth, ethics, experience, and social organization.
Myth. How so?
Well, nations rely heavily on their sacred histories, right? These national narratives are often as much, let's be honest, fiction or careful selection as historical fact. They function a lot like religious scriptures in shaping identity.
Okay, the founding myths, the heroic tales.
Exactly. And think about national anthems, flags, parades. Those function like rituals, evoking shared experience and powerful emotions. There's usually a distinct national ethic values people are expected to uphold. And of course, there's a social structure, national institutions, leaders.
That's actually quite compelling when you lay it out like that. But there must be differences, right? Smart didn't just say they were identical.
No, absolutely not. He was careful to nuance his argument. He acknowledged crucial distinctions. Well, for one, nationalism tends to be doctrinally weaker, he argued, compared to many traditional religions. It doesn't always have a complex, formalized theology or philosophy.
And that weakness makes it.
It makes it easily married, as he put it, to other strong ideologies. Think of how nationalism has combined with Marxism, or with various forms of Christianity throughout history.
Ah, okay, can latch on.
It can latch on. Also, nationalism doesn't necessarily offer a transcendent reality in the same way many religions do. Redemption, if you want to call it that, is usually found within the nation, in this world, not in some afterlife or higher plane.
Right, it's worldly salvation.
Exactly. And maybe most crucially, Smart saw nationalism as fundamentally a tribal religion.
Tribal, meaning exclusive.
Exclusive,
Right.
yes. Because it inherently excludes non-nationals. This often puts it in direct conflict with the universalist aims you find in many major world religions that, in theory at least, aim to include everyone.
Okay, so key differences acknowledged. But for Smart, these didn't fundamentally change the core argument.
For Smart, no. These differences were important to note, but they didn't, in his view, negate the basic claim of their essential functional similarity. He still saw them as comparable worldviews using his dimensional framework.
Okay, but as you mentioned, not everyone was sold on this equation. What were the main criticisms? The pushback against Smart's idea.
Yeah, there was definitely pushback. A major critique, voiced by scholars like Dave Seljak, was that Smart's categories, his dimensions, were simply too general, too broad.
Too general how?
Well, the argument went you could apply them to almost any organized human activity. Secular humanism, sure, but also communism, science. Seljak even threw in Major League Baseball for effect.
Baseball. Okay, point taken.
The point being, if the categories fit everything, do they really tell us something unique about religion or nationalism? Critics felt this approach was reductionist.
Meaning it flattened things out.
Exactly. It risked obscuring the deeper meanings, the specific intentions, the unique substance behind both religious and nationalist movements. It could reduce them both to just generic, complex human activities and miss what makes them distinct and powerful.
So it sounds like a core part of the problem, for the critics, was maybe how Smart defined religion or even sacred so broadly in the first place.
That's precisely a key point. Critics raised the issue of definitions. Smart stretched sacred to mean basically anything charged in a solemn manner.
Charged in a solemn manner.
Oh, okay. Which, allowed him to argue that even secular nationalism has its own kind of sacredness, sacred symbol, sacred ground. But critics saw this as problematic.
Why problematic?
Because it tended to ignore how people themselves understand and perceive these things. For example, someone going to a church service generally understands they're doing something fundamentally different than someone visiting, say, an art gallery, even if both experiences might evoke feelings of reverence or awe.
The context and the intent are different.
The intent matters, yes. The self-understanding of the participants. Critics felt Smart's broad functionalism could overlook that crucial aspect.
Okay, so if not this idea of essential sameness between religion and nationalism, what alternative ways did critics suggest for understanding the relationship?
Well, Seljak, and he was drawing on earlier work by Donald E. Smith here, emphasized looking at the variety of relationships that have actually developed historically between the two. It's not just one thing.
Okay, so more historically grounded.
More historically grounded, yeah.
Mm.
They identified basically three main themes or patterns you see recurring. First, religion over politics. Think theocracy, or maybe a powerful church using nationalist language for its own ends.
Okay, religion dominant.
Second, politics over religion. This is where a nationalist movement borrows religious symbols or language to gain legitimacy and popular support.
Right, nationalism dominant using religion.
And third, a kind of equal relationship. Here, religion and nationalism might exist side by side, maybe sometimes in tension, sometimes cooperating, sometimes just separate spheres of influence.
Can you give an example of that third one?
The classic example often cited is Quebec in the 1950s. You had, broadly speaking, Anglophone capitalists dominating the economy, while the French-speaking Catholic Church dominated social life, culture, education. Two powerful forces coexisting, sometimes uneasily.
I see. So the critics argued Smart's approach missed this complexity.
They argued his more abstract, a historical definition, one that didn't deeply engage with specific historical context, kind of glossed over the depth and seriousness, as they put it, of these really complex, dynamic, evolving struggles and relationships between religious and national identities.
And this whole debate, it isn't just some dusty academic argument, is it? It actually has real-world implications, even affecting how religious education is discussed today.
Oh, absolutely. It's striking how relevant it remains. The whole concept of worldviews, which is central to current debates, particularly in English religious education, it echoes Smart's approach.
How so?
Well, there have been proposed reforms aiming to reshape religious education, or RE, to include secular worldviews alongside religious ones. The idea is often to shift the focus from learning about specific religions to helping students explore their own personal worldviews.
Okay, sounds potentially inclusive, but there's criticism.
Yes, significant criticism. Groups like Jewish and Catholic Educational Services, among others, have voiced serious concerns. They worry that this kind of worldviews approach risks diluting the teaching of RE
Diluting it how? By moving away from specific traditions.
by potentially moving away from the specific content, history, and nuances of actual religious traditions. They argue it could even depress religious literacy at a time when understanding things like religious diversity or religious persecution is arguably more important than ever.
And the connection back to Smart.
The interesting thing is, critics point out that this worldviews approach, while often presented as new, frequently ends up circling back implicitly or explicitly to something very much like Ninian Smart's dimensional model. It's like reframing his ideas rather than offering fundamentally new solutions to the ongoing challenges of teaching about religion and belief in a diverse society.
So his legacy, whether people agree with him or not, is still shaping the conversation.
It absolutely is. It continues to influence and definitely sometimes provoke really significant discussions in religious studies and education decades after he first proposed these ideas.
So thinking about all this,
hmm
what does it mean for us, for the listeners, trying to make sense of a world that's clearly shaped so powerfully by both religious movements and nationalist ones?
That's the big takeaway, isn't it? Even if you critique Smart's specific equation of nationalism as religion, his work still offers this incredibly useful lens for comparative analysis.
Oh.
It challenges us, I think, to look beyond the surface differences between belief systems, to identify those underlying functional similarities, how different worldviews, whether we call them religious or secular, actually operate in people's lives and in society.
So looking at what they do, providing meaning, identity, community.
Exactly. It encourages us to think about that profound, maybe universal human need for meaning, for identity, for belonging, that both religious traditions and nationalist movements seem to tap into and try to fulfill.
And it prompts us then to be critical consumers, perhaps, to really
Right.
examine the narratives, the rituals, the institutions that shape our societies.
Yes, and to recognize that these big human projects, whether they're framed in religious terms or nationalistic ones or even internationalist ones, they're always conditional, aren't they? They're ambiguous. They hold the potential for incredible liberation and for terrible oppression.
Understanding those dynamics, those potentials, seems absolutely essential for engaging thoughtfully with the complexities we see all around us.
It really is. And Smart's work, even with the debates it sparked, leaves us with this lingering, I think, quite profound question. If systems like nationalism, with their flags, anthems, historical narratives, and these demands for fervent loyalty, if they function so much like traditional religions in key ways,
Yeah.
what does that tell us about the fundamental human architecture, about our deep-seated need for meaning, for belonging, for something larger than ourselves? It really makes you consider the power and the potential danger inherent in any strong collective identity, whether we label it religious or not.
That's definitely something to chew on. We hope this deep dive has given you, our listeners, a fresh perspective on these really intricate relationships between religion and nationalism, and of course the groundbreaking, thought-provoking work of Ninian Smart.
Absolutely. And if you found value in this exploration today, we really encourage you to follow this deep dive series. We'll keep digging into complex topics like this.
And hey, if you enjoyed what you heard, please do take just a moment to give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. It genuinely helps us reach even more curious minds like yours.